Yeah, look, so I want to give your listeners a peek behind the curtain, as it were. I mean, I'm a criminal solicitor, but I did a lot of immigration work, public immigration work. Look, whether you're a lefty or a righty, firstly, the Conservative Party didn't unsign us from the ECHR, even though when they had a huge majority. So let's, straight off the bat, let's knock that on the head. But the more important point is that none of this matters as long as we're party to the ECHR through the Human Rights Act. This is all political fiction because as long as we are party to the convention, just as I used to before, we as the lawyers can challenge again. This means nothing, just as the Rwanda plan meant nothing, right? It won't lead to any change. And we've got politicians now who, for whatever reason, think the public are stupid. I mean, maybe some of the public are. But in terms of, especially Article 3, in terms of the immigration, tribunal...
Which covers, Jonathan, not to interject, but just Article 3 covers torture and inhuman and degrading treatment. Article 8 covers the right to a family life. Carry on.
Right, but Article 3 is the main one because it's the only one that there's no conditions upon it. Even with Article 2, which is a right to life, you can balance it against the public good. Article 8 also. All I need to do as a lawyer, without working as a law lecturer, all I need to do as a lawyer to lodge an appeal on behalf of one of my clients or former clients is to show that there's a reasonable prospect that their Article 3 rights will be infringed. So, I'm a ethnic minority as well. My parents were immigrants from similar part of the world to your parents. And, the police and army in our motherlands and fatherlands, a lot of them don't particularly respect human rights, right?
True. That's very true.
So all I need to show is that my client, I'll just make a name up, Mr. Khan from Kunduz in Afghanistan or wherever, that there is a reasonable prospect that if he is deported, regardless of whatever crimes he's committed here, he might be a rapist here, there's a reasonable prospect that he will be tortured or subjected to inhumane or human or degrading treatment, and then he stays. And again, you could think that hashtag refugees welcome here, or you could think send them all back. But I'm just giving the objective, point. And then when I train up my younger lawyers, I say to them, as lawyers, all we're doing is we're representing the client, and we just file appeal after appeal after appeal. And I filed so many successful appeals for asylum seekers in places like Brookhouse, in places like Yarlswood, and this entire situation doesn't change. And for whatever reason, neither party wants to let the public in on this.
Well, Jonathan, this is a really, really important contribution, specifically because you are an immigration lawyer. Now, this goes to the centre of the argument, right, being made by Chris Philp, and I guess Reform UK would say the same thing, because both of them have come to the conclusion that being part of the European Convention on Human Rights simply does not work. Now, Robert Jenrick was the one who was unfashionably saying this quite a long time ago and was being ridiculed as completely ridiculous and outlandish and right-wing and all the rest of it. I think an increasing number of people are coming to that conclusion, including myself right now, pretty reluctantly, and I don't know what that means for the Northern Ireland peace process, but I guess we'll have to think about that quite hard. Now, if that is indeed the case, Jonathan, then is all this a smokescreen that Shabana Mahmood's talking about, sounding tough, but again, doomed to failure?
Yeah, I think so, and I'd go one step further. I think the Tories, what they're saying now, is the same thing also, because they had 14 years, and for whatever reason, when I was fighting the cases in front of the Immigration Tribunal, the Upper Tribunal, the Tories, and I know you've sort of run for the Tories before, but the Tories were talking tough, but still not unsigning.
Yeah, they didn't deliver. I agree, absolutely.
Yeah, and I don't really understand this, and also just on a non-lawyer point, as a ethnic minority brown man like you myself, I, for the first time, we're of a similar age, I really feel this country's becoming tense now, especially, things like when I grow my beard out. I live in quite a... I don't live in Harrow, but I live in quite a white, deprived working class area, and it's really tense, and there's a real anger
I can feel it, Jonathan, too, and I think Shabana Mahmood, to be fair to her, can also, from what she's saying on the surface of it, also gets it, and maybe she gets it because of her background, and she can feel that the nation is divided. The question is, if her policy's not going to resolve it, then she's playing with fire.
Yeah, but I don't know why they keep. I don't know why they keep doing this. As in, by they, I mean Labour and the Conservatives. They keep saying we're going to. It's like it's the one in, one out policy.
Yeah,
which I said at the time. I talked to one of your colleagues. I said it's not going to lead to any change. I said 5 years ago to Tom Swarbrick, I said, look, you can be a right winger. You don't know my politics, Ali, right? You can be a right winger or a left winger. But in terms of the law, when I train up these 22, 23-year-old lawyers, I say as long as we've got the ECHR, if you're going to be a public immigration lawyer, just file challenge after challenge. And if you've got an asylum seeker from Sudan, from Mazar-e Sharif, wherever, there is a reasonable prospect that they will be abused.
Okay, Jonathan, hang on the line. Just hang on the line for a second, okay? Just don't go anywhere, because I'm going to bring in Hassan in on this. Hassan, afternoon.
Yes, hello. Hi, yes. So, look, I think this is not a panic attack, but it is still a racist policy. Shabana Mahmood is seeing a tottering Starmer in Downing Street, and this is her pitch for the keys of 10 Downing Street. She's trying to prove to the right that she can be the Suella Braverman of the Labour Party, which can kick down on her community, can forget about her own parents and how they arrived, and she can be as nasty as necessary in the pursuit of power. The entire debate is bogus. The irregular arrivals are less than 4% of inbound migration. Our country and the crisis that we face in housing, NHS, etc., is not because of these 30,000 people or 40,000 people arriving in small boats. They're a function of deeply of terrible decision-making by Labour, by Tory, and then before that by Labour over decades. And to blame it on some poor refugee trying to escape from the Sudan, I think is deeply disingenuous.
Okay, but Hassan, let me just ask you this, and I'm going to bring Jonathan back in a second. I mean, Jonathan is an immigration lawyer and is saying that unless we get out of the ECHR, all this is a complete waste of time, bogus nonsense.
Yes, and I'm saying that we should not be getting out of ECHR because it was created to make sure that right-wing governments do not look away from Jewish refugees when they arrive on their shores. And that is exactly the precedent that we should continue.
Okay, hold on, Hassan. Jonathan, Hassan is saying that Suella Braverman is basically trying to position herself as the Suella Braverman of the Labour Party. She's kicking down on her own community.
You mean the other one, right? You mean Shabana Mahmood? Yeah.
Shabana Mahmood, sorry, go on.
Yeah, okay. I'll just ask Jonathan I'll just ask Hassan one thing. He said it's a racist policy. As part of the firm I worked at about 10 years ago, we represented two individuals, one from Afghanistan, one from Pakistan. They were both convicted sex offenders, and I successfully allowed both of them to remain in this country, one under Article 3, one under Article 8. Do you think it is racist to ask convicted sex offenders like my two clients, whom I successfully allowed to stay in the country, do you think it's racist to deport sex offenders?
No, I do not think it is racist to deport sex offenders. Sex offenders are completely unacceptable members of society. But what I tell you is it is racist to pretend that the asylum seekers are sex offenders. And this is the worst kind of... This is the worst kind of... So not all asylum seekers are sex offenders. And what you are saying is actually falling exactly into the trap. And this is not the first time. This is what was used to be labeled on the black community, that they're all sex-crazed maniacs chasing after white women. That is a lie. These are people who are, vast majority of them, are fleeing incredible hardship. And they should be treated in a court of law. And if their asylum claims are justified, they should be given protection. If they're sex offenders, they should be treated exactly as the law requires them to be treated. But do not conflate asylum seekers with sex offenders like you've just done.
No. Again, you've gone very emotional, Hassan. I'm saying...
Yes, of course I have. Yes.
Well, that's the problem. Two of my former clients were asylum seekers who were convicted sex offenders, and we lodged successful appeals. And it's a bit counterintuitive for a defence brief to be talking like I am. We lodged successful appeals under the ECHR for one under Article 3, one under Article 8. So thanks to me and my firm, we've got two convicted asylum seeker sex offenders who are in this country and who have indefinite leave to remain. Do you think it's racist to want those individuals to be kicked out? Because my profession says keep them here. Do you agree?
The issue is that if they are sex offenders, they should be prosecuted as sex offenders, right?
Yeah, they were.
And what you are doing is they were. Then and they are, and I hope they serve the rest of their life in jail.
No,
right?
they didn't. They came out. They came out. They served their sentence. They came out. Then we lodged appeals because under the ECHR, it is against their Article 3 rights for one individual and Article 8 rights for the other individual to be deported. So we successfully lodged appeals for them to stay in this country after release from prison. Is that racist to ask that they should be deported?
No, I do not think it is racist to ask for sex offenders to be deported, right? But what I'm saying is that the examples that you're quoting are a tiny, tiny fraction, and what what you're feeding into is this wider propaganda, which is that asylum seekers are somehow sex offenders.
Okay.
Do you agree with that?
Okay, Hassan. Before you come back, Jonathan. Jonathan also made the point about the fact that he's of an immigrant background, as am I, and we can both feel that there is a tension rising in society, right?
Yes.
Now, Shabana Mahmood's identified that too. You might be thinking that she's motivated by getting the keys to Downing Street, but she's ostensibly saying, I want to unite my divided country. I mean, if there is a problem of rising tension, what's the issue with trying to resolve this to ensure that people don't come across putting their own lives at risk and abusing the system?
No, I agree. And what she's doing is she's making a bad process even worse. Right? I think, yes, our asylum system is broken. It takes far too long. We don't let people work, and they're too large a burden on our society. That I agree with. But her solutions are exactly the wrong things, right? If you've come here and you have been judged by an asylum process as having a right to stay, then you should not be given a 20-year path when everybody else has a 3-year or 5-year path or whatever. You cannot be discriminated because you arrived in a particular way, right?
I mean, there's no upper limit.
Okay,
there's no upper limit.
Okay, finish your point. Jonathan, last point to you. Hassan, thanks. Jonathan, last point to you. Go on.
And so there's no upper limit. Look, I'm a Corbyn voting leftist, vegan, but is there no upper limit? I mean, all three of us are brown men, and is there no, do we just say everybody gets in? I think we leave that,
the repercussions. We'll leave that hanging. Hassan, go on, final point. Go on, Hassan, quickly.
They're not, this is an exaggeration. There are 40,000 people come in. We are a country of 65 million.
Yes,
we have 1 million people who come in as migrants. So you are completely exaggerating. If you ask, there's a very interesting YouGov poll. If you ask people, white people, what is the biggest issue facing the country, they say asylum is number 2 at 52%. But if you ask them, what is the biggest issue facing your family and you, asylum goes down to 20%. This is a manufactured process.